So while on the subject of immigration, border security, why Justin Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago, what Donald Trump has used the tariff threat as a means for Canadians to focus on their border security, for Justin Trudeau to clean up his act, and we hope that maybe this ultimatum by Donald Trump is the exact thing that's going to change Trudeau around. Let me just remind people that Justin Trudeau recently made a video before the Mar-a-Lago dinner where he went on his own YouTube channel. That's right, our Prime Minister has a YouTube channel. And he discussed how he's going to change the immigration policy. But in a way, this is how crazy it is. In a way that's not actually going to fix and implement measures that would limit the amount of people coming in and actually put pressure on temp agencies. But he's actually trying to point the finger elsewhere. So the National Post pointed this out, saying Trudeau says he could have acted faster on immigration changes in the video. Over the next 2 years, the permanent residency stream is being reduced by about 20% to 365,000 in 2027. So this is what he stated. This is the change that's happening. He's going to limit the amount of people that are exploiting the system to have permanent residency status here in Canada, but only temporarily. Only temporarily. Because he knows, and his party knows, that there's a driving force of corporations, of NGOs, and other investors that pay into his campaign that want this open door policy, that want open borders, that are using the migration crisis here in Canada, just like the United States, to exploit the workforce of those nations, on top of other different reasons. So the National Post points out, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the federal government should have acted faster on reining in on immigration programs after blaming bad actors for gaming the system. Trudeau released a nearly 7-minute video on YouTube Sunday talking about the recent reduction in permanent residents being admitted to Canada and changes the temporary foreign worker program. Over the next 2 years, the permanent residency stream is being reduced to about 20% to 365,000 in 2027. Why does it have to wait an extra 3 years? Why do we have to wait that long to have a reduction? And why is this only a 20% reduction when you've already implemented over millions of these undocumented immigrants? And as I've always stated, and I'm just going to reiterate again, I have always stayed true to the fact that I don't put the blame on the immigrant themselves, because they are being exploited just as much as we are being exploited in this measure. It is just a roundup of human smuggling, bringing them into this country to abuse them and manipulate them into cheaper labor. And you're going to see how people within Justin Trudeau's administration abuse that power, and why they're suddenly changing course. So in the video, Justin Trudeau talks about the need to increase immigration after pandemic lockdowns ended in order to boost the labor market, saying the move helped avoid a full-blown recession. That was back in 2021, as we pointed out. That's the intent of it, because of all the restrictions, all the mandates, the controlled demolition that we did to our own economic system, that we did to our own economic base. We told people to get away from work. We told them that they had to be, laid off, or they had to close down their business. If you're a small business, you probably lost it. 7 out of 10 businesses in Toronto alone were forced to close down, and they will never reopen again. They shut everything down, gave you a tiny bit of a severance package to shut you up during the pandemic, and then brought these people in because the labor market was short. It's So do you see how this is all a scheme? Do you see how you're being exploited through this? Do you see how they're abusing this process? And still to this day, as unemployment is continuously skyrocketing in Canada, the amount of young people, the youth unemployment is skyrocketing. There's people out there that can't even get jobs at Tim Hortons anymore, at your local coffee chain. That used to be a staple. That used to be a staple in this nation. Now there's people that can't because the parent company that runs Tim Hortons, which is Restaurant Brands International, exploit the temporary foreign workers program during COVID to bring in migrants and abuse them for cheap labor. To which the UN called an extreme, what was it? A modern day take of slavery. I know I'm butchering the words, but it's basically the same thing, what they said there. But after that, Trudeau says some bad actors took advantage of these programs, such as employers trying to avoid hiring Canadians, schools recruiting more international students for higher tuition money, or scams promising bogus passive citizenship. So why are there no investigations on this? So why in all of Trudeau's ranting that he did in that video, if he knows who the bad actors are, if they know who exactly is at fault for this open border policy, why is there no retaliation to put pressure on them? Why are they not putting pressure on it? All they're saying is, oh, we might have a cutback, but it's not going to happen until 2027. And it's only temporarily. Because even in that video, he said after by 2030, we're going to have to restart it. Meaning we're going to have to bring in more migrants into the country. More undocumented migrants because the population of Canada isn't able to keep up. There's more and more baby boomers that are going to end up retiring, and the labor market is tight enough as is. And why is that? Because they exploited Canadian workers to bring in low-wage immigrants to take over those positions. And I don't blame the immigrant because they're the ones being exploited. They're the ones that are just trying to look to survive, much like anybody else in this world, and they're being exploited by the same system that's also exploiting us. Trudeau says he and his team could have acted quicker once it became apparent businesses didn't need the added labor help anymore. You think. A little too late on this. When you have people in tent cities, when you have a huge influx of people in all these different communities that they don't have the resources or services to treat their own people, let alone the people that are new coming to this country, undocumented. We don't have any measure. We don't have any security, and we just bring in these people. We bring them in caravans. We trench them through crossings within BC. We talked about the human smuggling cases that are going on in BC. There's just no means to security. This is a deep threat to national security. And it's also insulting to a lot of people that immigrated here under legal presence, that they went through the checkpoints, that they went through all the structures to come here legally, to get a citizenship, to look for better life. It's really an insult to them that we're just pouring these people in. And even the immigrants can see through this. Even the legal immigrants, not the migrants, but the legal immigrants are seeing how exploitive this is. Trudeau says the goal of government's immigration reduction is to help stabilize population growth while housing stocks catch up, and then to consider gradually increasing immigration rates once again. So again, this is all temporary. This is all a cover because people are aware of Justin Trudeau exploiting the measures and allowing these bad actors, as he's pointing out here, that he's going to let get away with this because he's not putting any pressure on them. He's not putting any pressure on places like Tim Hortons. They're known to exploit this measure. He's not putting any pressure on the schools because the schools are paying him. The schools are campaigning for more of the Liberal Party. And while this is happening, He knows he's in trouble. He knows it's an election cycle. So now he's going to put out this phony video to say, hey, we're going to reduce the numbers. We're going to reduce the numbers temporarily, but then spike it back up again without any real rational plan to actually discuss border security. So now you understand why Trump had to chime in and light a fire under Justin Trudeau's ass to do something about this. Because they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to be, Mr. Cared about border security. At the same time, they're bringing in more migrants under our noses. So here is the Immigration Minister Marc Miller. So here's Immigration Minister Marc Miller. This is back in February. And this is what he said about the influx of migrants that are pouring into this country that we just don't have the services for. We don't have the housing. We don't have the ability to cater to our own people, let alone all these people that are now pouring in. And it's not that, we don't care about, diversity. We don't care about these people. Like I said, I'm not putting the blame on the immigrants. I'm putting the blame on the system that drove these people in, probably from war-torn countries, probably from sanctioned areas that we, us here in Canada, with our heinous foreign policy, have done to these people, brought these people in, and treated them in this manner. That we're just smuggling these people in, using them, humanly exploiting them for cheap labor. And here's what Marc Miller had to say about it.
To link housing to the volume of people that are coming here to seek refuge and asylum, equally unhealthy to relate it to immigrants. The price of houses has jumped as a result of interest rates, and affordability has jumped as a result of that. That isn't because of volumes that we are seeing. At the same time, and these are two truths that can be the case at the same time, it's no surprise that people that are here temporarily, as economists measure, do put pressure on what they call the cost of shelter. This is more of a humanitarian challenge because the type of shelter that we would deploy as a responsible country to welcome these people, affordability has struck every single part of the country, and that is not something that asylum seekers have created, nor should they be held responsible for.
And we can't mention that because it's unhealthy. That's the word he used. It's unhealthy to associate the mass amount of people that were pouring into our country and the services we're able to provide to them. It's simple mathematics. That's why right now, the migrants that were pouring into this country right now are forced to sleep in old arenas and sports stadiums. We saw recently a video in Ottawa that they had to turn 2 buildings into temporary housing because we just don't have the shelter for them. So I think, yes, we can correlate the two. The fact that economists are saying it, we can correlate the two, but it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy, according to Marc Miller, according to the immigration minister. Are these migrants pouring in with seed oils? Is that how they're getting under the fence? What are you talking about, unhealthy? What does that mean? It's unhealthy to connect the two. It's unhealthy to connect the dots. That's what he said back in February of 2024. Now, here's what he said just recently on the CBC, on the CBC radio network. And because now the Trudeau government is caught with this, they know this is a top issue. They know that it's a priority for a lot of Canadians. It's a upcoming election issue to talk about border security, considering the fact that Trump is more concerned about border security in this country than our own ministers. So now here's Marc Miller, looking like Ron Weasley's granddad. Just the poofy red hair there. Going to change his tone because now they're caught. Now they're caught between a rock and a hard place, pouring in these people and realizing we don't have the services, which is what economists and Canadians, just normal Canadians, have been saying throughout this whole process. It's not that we don't care about them, it's that we just don't have the means to stretch out and lend a hand to these people. So listen to this.
Is this change an admission by the federal government that what's been going on over the past few years hasn't worked? That we've been oversubscribed essentially?
Well, I think it is worth examining what has worked and what hasn't worked. We do have our share of responsibility federally. Immigration is a shared jurisdiction, and we own a lot of the increase that I think was important to prevent the economy from going into the recession and the growth that we've had, which has almost entirely been due to immigration. That's come with what the Bank of Canada has said is a conundrum, what economists have said is a conundrum on services, on the ability of provinces to adapt. And so it is a collective effort by the federal government, by provinces, in this case BC, and by municipalities to adapt to larger numbers. And so that listening exercise over the last year.
But you just said back in February that was unhealthy. It's unhealthy to coordinate migrants and connect them towards services and housing and the availability that provinces can get to them. We couldn't say that because it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy to have that mindset. Here you are just discussing this. That we Liberal Party have a collective responsibility to make sure to prioritize all this, to make sure there's enough services to coordinate with the migrants. So yes, exactly what we've been saying. Exactly what we've been saying. Exactly what most Canadians have been saying. Most economists have been saying about this. This is what Trump is trying to tell you guys, and they had to use the form of a tariff ultimatum to finally get it through, you suckers. And that's because people like Marc Miller and Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland and all these other Liberal cabinet positions are filtered through and prioritized with campaign contributions to these companies, to these organizations that exploit these migrants, exploit for cheap labor. And now, because now we're dealing with a huge crisis right now, we have an affordability crisis, we have high inflation, we have cost of living, we have housing shortages, we have a homelessness epidemic, we have people pouring in, we have human trafficking allegations, huge amounts in BC and a lot of different areas. We have crimes that are skyrocketing here in Canada. So now all this is coming into play right in front of Marc Miller's face, and now he's trying to change the tone. He's trying to whitewash the past of what he said earlier to say, oh, no, now we do have a responsibility. First it was unhealthy. Now, okay, now we got to do something.
What has been significant, and I think it was clear to me that it was important to reduce not only temporary residents, international students, like we've been doing over the last year, but also on the permanent levels to make them more manageable. And I think that, yes, is absolutely our responsibility as the federal government.
This has led to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre accusing the...
By the way, he mentioned about international students, and I wish I had this in, but I didn't know till last minute. Did you know that as of recently, I think there was an investigation that did last month, so at the beginning of November, that there's been over 1,000 fraudulent visas, student visas that are pouring in to Canada. Over 1,000 of fraudulent visas of international students that all these colleges, all these universities gather these people in because the more international students that they pour in, the more tuition they have to pay, and the more money that these institutions receive from international students. And that's why they keep pouring these people in, getting student visas for them to pour in this money, because they have to pay more tuition than Canadian students, and disfranchises Canadians disproportionately. So, again, they don't put any pressure on, college institutions. They don't put any pressure on the companies that are exploiting them for cheap labor. But here he is going on making this like faux pas. Oh, we got to take some responsibility. Because, yeah, I guess in a way they're kind of right. That we don't have the housing. We don't have services to treat the people that are pouring into the country. Yeah, I guess that is an issue. I guess we should be addressing it. And why are they addressing it now? Because it's election year. Because they know that their ass is on fire. They know that even Donald Trump has pointed this out. So now they got to do something. And I'm actually kind of surprised the CBC is actually, making arguments to hold Marc Miller accountable, considering the amount of money they get to cover for Justin Trudeau.
The Prime Minister and your party of flip-flopping here, making a last-minute policy reversal to, I suppose, bring policy more in line with what the Conservatives have proposed. How much influence did the reaction of opposition parties have on this new policy?
Well, I listen, frankly, to all Canadians. That includes criticism that I receive, whether it's from the NDP, the Bloc, or the Conservatives. Pierre Poilievre has been singularly irresponsible in his approach to immigration, saying that there's been this uncontroversial approach to immigration, consensus to immigration of the last 150 years. We know that that's not entirely true, whether it's the Chinese head tax, whether it's racial policies that went up to the 60s. He'll just make things up, and the only thing he's come up with is saying, well, math will solve it. Well, we haven't seen, if he wants an election tomorrow, we would have to see his plan. This is our plan. I think it's responsible.
Again, their plan is only temporarily. Their plan is to make theatrics pretending to solve the problem without actually solving the problem. Because again, the whole rebuttal, their whole change of shift, their whole 180 doesn't actually consult or doesn't actually point focus and attention to what's causing this crisis. To the fact that corporations are exploiting the temporary foreign worker program. There's no call to investigation on that. And the fact that they're putting dramatics onto, Pierre Poilievre, he just wants math involved in it. He just has these crazy, uneducated ideas. He had these crazy, cringeworthy ideas. Like how we're pouring in people from all these different countries, dangling a carrot in front of their nose. Hey, we're going to give you employment. We're going to give you a house. We're going to give you a bunch of money, and you're going to stay here, and you're going to live the Canadian dream. And then explain those people for them to realize that they're part of this machine. They're not treated as people. They're not treated as human beings. That we're abusing them and using them for either cheap labor, for military recruitment, because that's what they're doing in the United States, or they're doing it intentionally to garner more Liberal voters. And considering this is happening in an election year coming up, very, very telling. So here once again is Marc Miller. This is at the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade. So this is at a business gathering or a function. And now he's going to say that, oh my God, these businesses are going to be affected by the cutback on immigration. So listen to this.
Of unlimited supply of cheap foreign labor is over, and I think that is a good thing. But it isn't. These are not sort of binary discussions and decision points. There's some nuance within them, and it comes with a package of reforms that are important, and we'll continue to work, consult with industries, consult with employees, consult with organizations that have these issues near and dear to their heart to make sure that we get the policy package right, and that includes, importantly, the province of BC.
So it's not actually going to solve anything. And even the restriction process, there's no real enforcement to it. There's no backing. There's no real rational plan laid out to restrict the problem that they have snowballed into this great, massive, just absolute atrocity to our border security. And do you think that they're going to calculate a plan to kick out as many people as they brought in? Do you think that there's some rationale to do it? Because this is the immigration minister that is spending his time talking about how awful, the critics are being, and saying that, hey, we got a responsibility, but not actually taking full-on responsibility to coordinate a plan. Whereas at least Pierre Poilievre, and some people will object to it, I being one of them, that yes, there are some critiques of his plan, but at least he has a plan. At least he has something intact with this. He has something intact to focus on the security aspect of this, that we need to focus on border security. That just cutting back a tiny bit on the migrant flow for a temporary period isn't going to do anything. It's not going to do anything. You need actual legislation. You need something actually to play and put into pact so that we lower the numbers. And if we, you want to talk about immigration, you want to talk about where these people are coming from, hey, let's stop putting sanctions onto Latin American countries. Let's stop putting our foreign affairs into these areas and turning them to war state countries. There's an idea. Because a lot of these people did not want to leave their homes. A lot of these people, a lot of immigrants, have a very huge connection to the place that they live. And for them to pack everything up, leave their families, or sometimes take their families, and try to start a new life in a different country is detrimental to them. And that's why I don't put the shame on them. That's peasant mindset. People that blame immigrants, people that blame the newcomers coming in, that's what they want you to think. That's part of their that's part of the oligarchs' ideals since we had immigration. That they've always wanted to put the blame on people with less money and less power than you. Whether it's being the immigrants or homeless people, they've always wanted you to blame those that are destroying the country instead of people like Marc Miller, who should know better, who caused this problem, and then is pretending to fix it. And trying to fix that problem with a piece of gum and trying to, blockade the hole. Instead of actually constructing a crucial plan that focuses on border security.